Yes, as the video title states, 15,000 kilometers from one chain with no measurable wear. If I hadn't done the Ks myself on my own bike, I'd be calling that complete bull. So coming up in this video, how I managed to get almost 3 years of gravel riding from one chain that I finally swapped out this week for no other reason than, well, I've had a replacement ready to install for over 12 months now. And surely after 15,000 Ks, something was bound to eventually give. The chain and drivetrain in question is on my Aspero gravel bike. It's a SRAM XX1 Eagle chain with a 1x mullet setup, a 42 tooth up the front and a 1052 or an 1150 up the back, depending on which wheel set that I'm running. The chain that I've just retired was the original you may have seen back in December 2020 that I prepared using the Gatorade bottle method and Silca Super Secret drip wax. My experience with Super Secret drip wax early on, to be honest, wasn't that great. On a brand new chain with a brand new application of this, things would get noisy after about 30 to 40 Ks, so just after an hour of riding. I'd come home, put a little bit more on, go out for a ride the next day. It'd last a little bit longer, but it took around 500 Ks or 6 or 7 reapplications of this to come good, or to be at a level that I'd expect this to be, and that is quiet, as is sold. Just over a year ago, I was having a discussion with Josh from Silca about that experience, and he went deep down the rabbit hole explaining exactly what was going on. It takes a number of reapplications of this for it to condense or compress down to the consistency where it's in its optimal state. I'll put a link in the video description below to a recent Silca video where Josh discusses this exact topic in detail. With Super Secret taking multiple applications on a new chain to get to an optimal working state versus hot melts, which gets the wax there right away, I've since got myself a crock pot and switched to that method of waxing every 1000 Ks, using the Super Secret drip for top-ups between hot melt applications. Over the weekend, as I swapped out the chain with 15,000 Ks on it, replacing it with a brand new Eagle chain, identical to what I was taking off, I decided to do a head-to-head comparison to see what the differences were, new versus old. Surely after that many Ks, there'd be a measurable difference, right? Okay, onto my 4 head-to-head tests of new versus old. I have both chains here on screen. I'll put a line through here so you can tell which one is which. Both stripped of any wax or packing grease prior to these tests. And the first test was with the Pedro Chain Checker 2, or the Pedro Chain Checker Plus, which is certified for use on Eagle 12-speed chains. The new chain showing no signs of wear, which is a good sign early on, for sure. Onto the old chain. Now this is off the bike, but I am pulling the chain still quite tight. And that's not going in at all. Now it's only a single point test, but I did multiple points around the chain, and same deal. No measurable chain wear with the Pedro Chain Checker Plus. Next up, just a simple side-by-side test here, lining them up one for one, and look, there's next to nothing in that either. So, where was the wear? Surely there had to be some wear somewhere. On the scales, the new chain weighing in at 245 grams, and the old chain weighing in at 244 grams, which is probably within manufacturing margins anyway, so nothing worth noting there. Something that was worth noting was the anodization of the rainbow. That's the new chain there, the old chain there. If I flip the old chain over, the anodization on the inside had worn off. So that may be where that gram has gone missing, but there was a slight amount of wear compared to the new chain, which is the same both sides, versus the old. Looking a bit scruffy. Now, side test. This is the only other test I could think of. Let's see if the side plates had any more bend in them. 2 chains side by side here, and about 40 centimeters or so of chain, and not much in that at all. I really expected the old chain to droop down a little more, but not much to be seen there. However, in flipping the old chain over, the result was interesting. So the same 40 centimeters or so. We'll snake that out and do a side bend test or a lateral test of the chain. And finally, we have some indication, possibly, the old chain had a little bit more wear on the side plates. Not quite sure if this is a valid test or not, but I did find it interesting that the old chain was a little bit more droopy in that direction, but only on one side. As I said in the intro, if I hadn't done the Ks myself on my own bike, I would not believe what I was seeing and measuring there on that chain after so many Ks. Okay, rolling through onto my random chain waxing experience notes that I've written down here. And I'll be the first to admit chain waxing is not for everyone. If you have the time and the equipment, it can be brilliant, but it's not suitable for everyone. And I won't even cover the marginal gains or the watts saved. For me, the benefits are elsewhere. Firstly, having a toddler running around the house and in the garage, he's grabbing a hold of everything, chains, cassettes, smart trainers. The cleanliness is unbelievable. If little llama grabs a hold of a chain, just brush his hand clean, it's done. No oil marks on anything. And secondly, saving money on chains, cassettes, and chain rings. Those things aren't cheap these days. And in addition to that, having multiple wheel sets, multiple cassettes, multiple chain rings, swapping things around when the wear rate is so low is much easier. There's no mismatch between a chain ring having 5,000 Ks on it versus a new chain. Those things will mesh and work just fine with a waxed setup. And as such, all of our bikes that we have in the Llama garage, including Mrs. Llama's bikes, are now on waxed chains. Continuing on through my list of realities of chain waxing, and it is a little more overhead and upkeep than running a standard oiled chain, where you can go out and ride for days, weeks, maybe months on end, not even worry about your chain. A wax setup requires you to reapply that wax every few hundred Ks. It only takes a few minutes, or if you're doing a hot melt dunk, about 20-25 minutes will get you done. But there is an overhead of running a waxed chain. New chain preparation is not easy. It can be time consuming, getting all that packing grease off the chain before applying the wax for the first time. However, you can now buy pre-waxed chains. They're at a premium, obviously, but you will save yourself some time if you don't want to go ahead with all that mucking around. Another important thing to note with a waxed chain setup is they're not usually compatible with rain and wet conditions. If you go out for a ride in the rain for a prolonged period of time and come home and just park your bike, your chain and cassette may start rusting within a few hours. It's always important, if you're running a wax setup, to dry your chain, dry your cassette, reapply some drip wax after any wet ride, and you'll be good to go. I have been caught out once or twice with that, but gotten on top of it straight away, so the rust didn't cause too much damage. And the final two things on my list here is, firstly, leave super secret on your bike chain to dry properly before riding it. There's a lot of water in here that needs to evaporate for this to work correctly. And never ride a newly waxed chain indoors without putting a drop sheet or a towel or something down. Wax flakes will go everywhere. It's not ideal indoors with a first waxing or a re-waxing. It can get very, very messy. Look, my schedule for hot melt is every 1,000 Ks or so, and a reapplication of this every 200 to 300 Ks. Probably a little bit more than it needs, but you've seen the results. Those chains last forever doing this. Before dropping a chain into the hot melt or reapplying drip wax, I don't bother boiling the chain or stripping it clean. I just simply wipe it down with a clean rag and then dunk it or reapply the drip wax. So there it is, how I got 15,000 kilometers out of one gravel chain with no measurable wear. Well, no measurable wear on the Pedro's chain checker anyway. That bend test was quite interesting. Now, it is worth noting that waxing chains does have a bit of a cult-like following. There's a lot of opinions, products, and debates online with this. What I've presented here today is my own experience over nearly 3 years now using the Silca products, going from the drip wax only onto the hot melt later on, and a combination of this as top-ups. That's worked really, really well. You've seen the results. Now, I am keen to hear if you're a chain waxer, maybe you've gone to chain waxing and moved back to oils because it was too much of a faff. Let me know in the comments below. I'm keen to hear your experience. And with that, thanks for watching.